Created equal, and we're coming to you live today, and we're going to let some people jump on here, give us some time for some people to jump onto the live stream. We're going to be talking about the breaking news coming out of Washington, D.C. last night. In fact, I was sitting in front of my computer at 9 p.m. You might wonder why I was doing that, because I was working and replying to email, and I get an email from Jonathan Van Maren with a link to the Politico article saying that a draft from Justice Alito on the majority position on Roe versus or the Dobbs case had been leaked to the media. So we're going to be talking about that today and what that means to the movement, to the decision, and all those things. So we're going to be taking questions from people. If you're watching on Instagram or Facebook, you can go ahead and fill out the question in the comments section, and we'll try to get those questions answered. So we're going to continue to allow some people to jump in here. My guest is going to be here is Katie Short with Life Legal Defense, and she's going to be helping to answer some of the questions because I'm sure there are going to be a lot of them. Because this is not normally how things work in Washington when it comes to the Supreme Court. This is not supposed to happen this way. So we want to kind of go through each one of these questions and ask them and get answers for you and try to give us a roadmap forward with the looks like the very probable overturning of Roe versus Wade. So once again, Mark Harrington here. I'm the president of Created Equal. I've got Katie Short on the broadcast today. This is a special episode, and we're going to be talking about the leaking of the draft document, the majority opinion by Samuel Alito that was leaked to Politico last night. So, Katie, thanks for being on the program.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
And I appreciate it late notice. I know that you are following this very closely. This is what you do at Life Legal Defense. And we appreciate the work that you do in defending us and keeping us out of trouble, trying to keep us out of court. And so when I was texting you last night, I was asking, what do you think? What do you think? So I thought, well, we'll just have you on the air today and we'll deal with it then. So this is unusual, right? Let's first deal with that. I've been reading here and there that this is like unprecedented, that the Supreme Court would either leak or this would be some kind of a hack or whatever. This information would come out before the decision was officially handed down. Do you know, in your history in doing this work, have you ever seen anything like this?
I have not, and it is very, very unusual. And I've read some books, by clerks who already sort of were pushing the limit of, revealing what was going on behind closed doors. But in terms of what was going on behind closed doors long after it had happened, but to have an opinion come out before, to get a peek into the deliberations and specifically a draft opinion before the final opinion is released is, as far as I know, unprecedented.
I know that some of the liberals, I've been watching some of their tweets and such, and they say, oh, this isn't unusual. And they cite all these cases, apparently, that there's been leaks like this. I don't think there's ever been a leak like this on a case that has the magnitude of the Dobbs v. Jackson. That's for certain. We don't know what happened. We assume that there was some kind of leak from within the court, probably from a liberal justice or a clerk, possibly. At this point, I don't know whether it matters or not. It is what it is. But how does that bode for the integrity of the court? I know John Roberts, and of course, all of us want the U.S. Supreme Court, the institution, to have credibility with the American people. And the fact that apparently that these conversations this been leaked, that this actual document, I mean, it is the opinion, the draft opinion. I'm reading it last night. That's crazy that someone let this out.
Well, I mean, you got to understand, Mark, that is clearly marked. This is a first draft. And
right.
Interestingly, last October, I actually heard Justice Alito speak. He was attending an event, and there was a little question to answer. And one of the questions was about to explain, please, the process that these opinions go through. And he did explain. He said, we talked about the vote that's taken after the oral argument. And then at that point, the opinion is assigned to a particular justice who is in the majority. The Chief Justice assigns it to one of the justices. And then as Justice Alito put it, he said, and then if it's assigned to you, you draft the opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And then you circulate it. And what you hope for is that what comes back from the justices is, this is perfect, don't change a word. But he said that rarely happens. So we really have to understand that this is a draft opinion. Now, I mean, obviously, you could, if this is the majority opinion, then there may be, tinkering around the edges, but you wouldn't expect the actual result to change. But I also think it's important to recall that along with the opinion this leak of the opinion came a leak of a rumor. And the rumor is that there are 4 other justices who are in agreeing with Alito on this. And
that's really the news.
I think the rumor that is really the news.
That's
that
the
is
case, for sure.
as significant.
Well, yeah. So the inside baseball is in December. They after the court heard the case, the oral arguments, which, by the way, I saw you out front of the Supreme Court that day. They get together, they have a conference, and they take an initial vote. Is that right? And then they assign the decision based on that vote to one of the justices. At that time, apparently, John Roberts was not one of those, so it might have been assigned to Clarence Thomas because he's the senior justice in the majority position, right? So did he hand it off to Alito? I know this is all speculation, but is that most likely what happened?
Well, no, I mean, I don't know how you could say that John Roberts was not in the majority and then would have assigned it to Alito. I mean, he wouldn't have necessarily taken the opinion writing to himself. He could be in the majority and have assigned it to Alito. You're right. You're correct that if he was not in the majority,
which we're assuming that he's not
at
this point, probably.
I mean, that's the rumor. But again, you have to understand, what does the majority mean here? What we have is a law, a 15-week abortion ban. And the question is it constitutional or is it unconstitutional? And so, that is the basic holding before the court. And so you could have 6 votes to say that the law is constitutional, to overturn the Fifth Circuit decision, but not 6 votes or even possibly 5 votes to overturn Roe. That's always been our concern in this case. Is that I don't think there's, would there be enough justices trying to find a middle ground, something less than overturning Roe, in terms of upholding the law? I only the most cockeyed optimist on the other side would say that they thought that the court would there'd be 5 votes to actually strike down.
My guest is Katie Short with the Life Legal Defense. We're talking about the leak of the draft opinion, majority opinion, at least at this point, from Samuel Alito that was leaked to the Politico last night. And we're trying to make some sense of all of this, for all the confusion out there. And if you're interested in asking Katie a question, you can do that on our Facebook page at Created Equal. Just write in the comment section your question, or on our Instagram page at createdequal.org. Katie, so let's go through a couple of these questions that I have. I asked my staff this morning to actually give me a few of these, and I want to get your take. So this is not a final decision. I can answer that. What do you think will happen now? I know this is speculation, but you have this draft out there. There's going to be dissents that are going to be written. Do you believe that they're going to wait until the end of the term, or could they rush this out because of the leak? What are your thoughts on
that? When you say they could rush this out, again, it's a matter of the dissenters. I mean, to the extent, well, first of all, finalizing the opinion, is there perhaps by this point that there is a final majority opinion, but you would have dissenting opinions, and they could take their time about writing those. And again, the drafts get circulated, and then you could have concurrences. So the dissent raises a point. So somebody wants to write a concurrence, which responds to that point. There's lots of things that could work to slow that down. Now, so when you say they could rush it out, the question is, who is they at this point?
Right. Well, I guess it's all of them. I guess that's probably, you're answering my question, that more than likely they're going to take their time and use the full term to get it out. That's probably most likely.
Some of 9 individual justices, who each of whom has their own view and their own, what they want to see happen in this case.
So let me ask you this: what if there is a strategy, and we don't know at this point as to why this was leaked, and it's almost impossible, obviously, to know. But can you conceive of any possible strategy that would work to reverse this supposed overturning of Roe versus Wade between now and the time they actually release the official opinion?
If there was some hope, if again, assuming that there was a tactical decision by someone, and I think we all assume that it was a tactical decision by someone on the pro-abort side, and why it was leaked to a left leaning publication. And I think perhaps that the thinking was that there would be such a, we had protests and pickets outside the Supreme Court as we have had for years, and we had in December, and they had, I think, later on, January 22nd or whatever. But they thought, well, maybe now is the time, if it was confirmed there are 5 votes to overturn Roe, or we need to do something. We need to, or there's one justice who's going back and forth. Now is the time to drop the nuclear bomb and really get people excited about this. I think they probably have miscalculated about that, though.
Mm-hmm.
I think protests will not be different in kind than they have been for 40 to 50 years. I think, you'll get people outside the court, and I don't think they will differ that much in kind or intensity from every time the court has done anything in the pro-life direction. It's always been, it's the end of Western civilization as we know it.
So when it comes to the leak, is there any protocol? I mean, the rules are not written, I assume, that this type of thing doesn't happen. Is there any repercussions for a justice or a clerk or someone in the court to release this kind of information, to leak it? I read today that John Roberts this morning has now commissioned the marshal of the U.S. Supreme Court to look into this. What happens in that case? What goes on?
Well, you're right. It is unprecedented. So I don't really know. I mean, I don't think, I can't imagine a justice being involved in this. I really can't. I would think it's more, I think he's more of a clerk. Now,
do clerks have, are they licensed to practice as attorneys? Are they attorneys generally or not? In other words, can they be disbarred or something for this?
They could. I mean, if they violated broke a contract or an agreement that they signed, that would certainly be something that would go to their general trustworthiness. And could a bar consider that in moral turpitude sort of thing? I don't know. I mean, I guess it's possible, and I'm just not familiar with the rules of all 50 state bars to see how much leeway they would have.
Gotcha. Kate,
I would think they'd be.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, Katie Short's my guest. We're talking about the leak of the draft majority opinion by the U.S. Supreme Court, apparently, that Justice Alito has drafted. The Politico released last night. So let's move on to the more practical. Assuming that this is the majority position, okay, even though it might be tweaked, might be changed a little bit, assuming that at the end of the term or somewhere between now and the end of the term, this is handed down and Roe is overturned, what would we be doing differently or should be doing differently if Roe falls? I guess that's the first question. And then I'm going to ask you about the things that are the liberals in Washington are now, getting a head start working on. So how does this change things if Roe falls?
Well, one thing, I think last time we spoke about this, Mark, shortly after the argument, and I was predicting that the pro-aborts would not just accept this as the final word from the Supreme Court on abortion in the Constitution, and that they would bring up other theories and try to find compliant judges who would go ahead. Now you've brought this as a brand new argument, and now I'm going to enjoin the law based on this brand new constitutional argument. One thing that this draft opinion does do is it forecloses, for instance, probably the most likely argument is the equal protection argument, that somehow abortionist. And so this opinion says, nope, that one doesn't work either.
Yeah, I
And
was
so,
very, as I read the decision late into the night, my eyes were beginning to glaze over. It seems like Justice Alito went out of his way to make clear that that isn't going to fly. Equal
right,
protection argument for the abortion right in the Constitution is not going to fly with the court, which I
right.
thought was a very smart preemptive strike against those who are probably wanting to prepare a lawsuit like that.
Right. Right, exactly. So, and I think, even if they could shop around and find some district court judge who would say, well, that was just dicta because that wasn't really, briefed or whatever. I don't think it would survive a trip to a court, the Circuit Court of Appeals, So
Right.
I was very happy to see that. And also kind of repeatedly talking about how it is not in the Constitution. Okay. and the laws that had been against abortion, the fact that abortion was criminalized, in this country had been for a long time, continued to be up till the eve of Roe. So it did seem to be trying to block the exit, so to speak.
So what does this
Um,
do? If Roe falls, some people are under the impression that abortion is illegal across the country. We all hopefully understand that's not the case.
right,
How does this affect, say, for an example, a heartbeat bill in the state of Ohio that has been held up in the courts because of the Roe versus Wade decision? If Roe falls, what happens to a heartbeat bill generally, or bills like it, or trigger laws that have either going to be put into place or are being are moving through the legislatures now? What typically will happen? Because I think a lot of people think that immediately, like a heartbeat bill is going to go into effect the day after Roe versus Wade falls.
right.
Is that
No,
right?
I mean, you have to have the whoever it is, the attorney general, to go to court and move to lift the injunction and let the law go into effect. And then, as I believe we also discussed before, you have to have prosecutors who are willing to enforce the law, and attorney general or local prosecutors. Which it is unfortunate that at this time, the burden is still on the pro-life movement to get everything lined up, to make this actually happen. You need to have the legislature to pass the laws. You need to have the executive to enforce the laws, and you need to have a judiciary, a state judiciary, who is not going to interfere either, because we have seen that over and over again, where state courts have found a constitutional right to abortion in their own state constitution on the flimsiest of grounds.
So it's unlikely that we're going to see an immediate enforcement of laws that have been either on the books and have been enjoined, or ones that were in force prior to Roe versus Wade being handed down. Uh, Let me ask. Here's a go
Well,
ahead. Let
I would
me ask this question. Overturning Roe. This is from our
just
Facebook page. By the way, folks, if you have a question, you can go to our Facebook page at Created Equal and ask it. Here's one from Ben. Overturn Roe versus Wade means we can then decide on the state level how the state defines abortion. Right or wrong?
how the state defines
Well, I
abortion.
guess what he probably
Uh,
means by that is now the states have the legal authority to
to
restrict
regulate.
and outlaws any way they wish.
Right. That is correct. The power returns to the states. The authority returns to the states. And again, and in some cases that may be directly all the way down to the people in the form of referendum or the legislature. And I think you will see very quick action in a number of states to that they will become abortion free, to the extent that it can be done in this day and age of male abortions through the mail with abortion pills and things like that. I mean,
Right.
there have to be a lot of effort to, I think, stem that particular way to flow of abortions.
My guest is
Is the
Katie Short with Life Legal Defense. We're talking about the leak from the U.S. Supreme Court, apparently, on the Justice Alito's draft of the majority position on Dobbs v. Jackson, and what that means. Assuming that the court does overturn Roe versus Wade officially, we're already hearing rumblings from those in Congress and in the White House about what they're going to do. They're talking about expanding the U.S. Supreme Court, which we call packing, and then removing the filibuster. Those are two things that are now on the table in order to pass what they're calling the Women's Health Protection Act, which is really just a way of trying to codify Roe versus Wade into law. Uh, do you think that that might have had something to do with this, the leak at this time, to kind of give them a little bit of a head start?
That's a very interesting theory. Yeah, because if you wait till the end of June and then Congress is going to session, they recess in August, that would be a pretty packed agenda to get in there before the midterm elections. So that's a possibility. But you also, given that this the overturning has clearly been easily contemplated since the oral argument in December and prior to that, when the court took the case to begin with, everybody knew that Roe was in trouble. And so would an extra 8 weeks make that much of a difference to the effort? Did they need this to make it really, really, really real that this could happen? I don't know, but it's possible. It's possible somebody, again, adjust a clerk or something at the Supreme Court, possibly being influenced by someone on the outside. We really, really, really need to know if this is going to happen because we need to make our plans. That's completely possible.
Well, we're already hearing about the filibuster and this Women's Health Protection Act being on the fast track now. So I guess it's time for us to start thinking what a post-Roe America is going to look like. I guess I'd like to ask you, where we want to have this balance between the fact that this is not an official position or a decision of the court, but it certainly appears like Roe versus Wade is going to be overturned. Some of us, like myself, I'm thinking, oh, this is certainly something we want to mark and celebrate to a certain degree.
Mhm.
But the time is not yet for that, I assume, right? I mean, we're marking the fact that it was leaked and what that means. But when it is handed down, assuming that it is overturned, how would you go about marking that and giving people suggestions on to how to treat this decision once it is handed down? Because I think a lot of people want to celebrate prematurely.
Well, I think we do. One of the things that Alito, this draft opinion, says is this far and no further in a couple of respects. One is in terms of abortion itself, like the Constitution is silent, on abortion.
Mhm.
So in terms of, is this, are we on the way to a actual finding or an actual holding that abortion itself is contrary to the Constitution? You certainly don't see that in the draft opinion.
Right.
The second thing is, just as far as Justice Alito also goes out of his way to say, and by the way, we're not touching a lot of our other crazy decisions either, gay marriage and all these other decisions that they come down, which are on equally shaky ground. But he says, no, we're not going there either. We're just undoing this one egregious wrong. So I guess that's where you would have to, that's what the celebration would be, is that an egregious wrong has finally been righted. And with that limitation, we are back to not where we were, but where we are back to a point where we can, at least fight on a level playing field, a somewhat level playing field.
Right. So I know you live in the state of California, and your legislature, I don't recall whether it passed it or not, but here's a question from Kelly Jean. She says, or he, I'm not certain, who knows, if Roe versus Wade were overturned, how would that potentially affect the AP Bill 2223 out of California and the other states seeking to legalize infanticide?
Unfortunately, it will simply incentivize those efforts, because what we're seeing in California is a full-blown effort to expand, promote, fund, sanctify
Right.
abortion And so, and if anything, to the extent it even needed a boost, but with a legislature that is a super majority of pro-abortion legislators, you don't really need the boost. But it will give them a talking point, a reason to look like heroes among their
right. And if you look at the map that I've been using for months now, was put out by the Center for Reproductive Rights, that shows the abortion-free states and the abortion havens, and there's a big expanse between them. We call them abortion deserts. You're going to have California, you're going to have Oregon and Washington on one coast, and you're going to have the Northeast on the other side of things, mostly, with a couple of states in between, like Illinois, New Mexico, where you basically have an abortion up until the very moment of birth. So that's going to be the new landscape, assuming that this decision is what it is, and we're overturning Roe versus Wade. Ben asks, would we anticipate a lot of the movement people leaving states depending on how their state defines or handles abortion? What do you think of that? Do you think there'll be Californians that'll leave California, or people that'll move to California based on their political persuasion or pro-life position? What are your thoughts?
I can't see a lot of movement. I mean, people are leaving California because, but
a lot of other reasons.
Yeah, a lot of other reasons that are much more likely to affect their everyday life, schools, business, anti-discrimination laws in businesses that say you must hire, basically you have to treat, men as women as men, speak to them that way. There's a lot more reasons that are going to affect people in their everyday life than the fact that there is an abortion clinic, operating down the street. But I would like to kind of send a message to any of your listeners who are in the, particularly the southeastern part of California. If you look at that map, where we expect to see where you would expect to see women traveling to California, unless they're flying in, would be, coming from Arizona. And speaking of abortion, speaking of deserts, it's desert down there, but it would be a place. Yeah. And it would, but we expect to see that there will be efforts to make sure that women don't have to travel 200 miles across the desert. They'll set up clinics and things so they just hop across the border as reasonably as they can, get as close to the Arizona border as possible. So those people there in, Imperial County, San Bernardino County, keep an eye out for plans to open up new clinics or expand existing clinics.
So if you have a question or comment, you can enter that into the comment question or a section of our Facebook page at Created Equal. For Katie, we're talking about the leaked opinion by Justice Alito to Politico on the overturning of Roe versus Wade in the Dobbs v. Jackson case. I'm going to ask you to now even more deeply gaze into your crystal ball and go beyond what we know the Biden administration is going to do and the majorities in the House, for sure, and Senate are going to attempt to do. And there are other things that the federal government can attempt. One is, I think the FDA may even go further with the abortion pill. They've already removed restrictions that limit the abortion pill's use, as far as requiring a in-person meeting with the physician, and now you can do it over telemed. Do you see that as a possible move, that maybe they would restrict states who are passing legislation right now to restrict the abortion pill? Do you think that the federal government might try to keep states from doing that?
I think that they will certainly be looking for ways to do that. But again, without the backstop of a federal court, the right to abortion. I mean, because for instance, you've had challenges to, I remember a case in Oklahoma, and I'm sure there have been others where states have said, basically all they said was, we're gonna follow the FDA rules, which were actually stricter than what abortion clinics were doing, and a court struck that down as because it was too restrictive on the constitutional right to abortion. But I don't know what sort of hook they would have to be able to say to invalidate state laws that are more restrictive than what the federal government chooses to do. For instance, states are allowed to if they wanted to ban smoking, below the age of 25, they probably could. So, or buying cigarettes. So, I don't think that they could do that. They might try to link it to funding, though. That would be a hammer that they could try to
Well, I
use.
think it was at least interesting this morning to see the Biden administration's reaction to this. They said that they were going to look to congressional remedies for the abortion issue, and they were. I expected them almost to come out and say we don't recognize the legitimacy of the decision, assuming it is what it is, or saying that this court is rogue. I really was shocked to see that they're basically assuming or going ahead with the notion that this is reality and they're planning for the future on a legislative level, because they have said things about the court in the past on other issues when they don't agree with them and basically ignored them. So I was really surprised to see that they didn't come out really strongly and just say, this is illegit. We need to expand the court. This is a good reason for it. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think where they've questioned the legitimacy of a federal court decision is where the federal court decision impinges on some sort of federal government action. Whereas here, this is the court stepping back and saying states are permitted to regulate and restrict abortion, and so the federal government is not in a position. They can say we don't recognize the legitimacy of this decision, but the states themselves certainly do.
Right.
And they are the ones who would be, closing down abortion clinics and finding, penalizing abortion providers. But I agree that they aren't at least pretending that we are going to put, the entire, every branch of the every branch of the executive branch, every agency onto, look for ways to,
which is what they kind of did in the Texas heartbeat
that
case as well. I mean, they were putting every resource they could to try to turn that one around. One thing that drove me crazy as I was looking through some of the comments were some pro-lifers assuring other pro-choice people that abortion's still legal. It's like, oh, don't worry, Roe versus Wade is overturned, but you can still get your abortion. I guess that's true to a certain degree, but I don't think that's a position we want to take. We want to say this reversed an egregious wrong. That is Roe versus Wade. And now it's up to the state legislatures to fix it once and for all, rather than saying, oh, no, you can go to, Illinois or California.
Right. Right.
That's a terrible talking point, but I saw that out there. I think we're just so worried that we're going to be painted as extremists other than taking the high ground. I was very impressed by Alito's argument too. I mean, it's very strong. I felt very encouraged that there are still men and women in the country that believe in the rule of law and are willing to take courageous action to defend the unborn. It came to tears as I'm reading this thing. It was awesome.
Yeah. And I think what the opinion does is, because Roe was just made out of whole cloth and the Alito decision comes along and says, wait, no, there is no constitutional basis. That has been the sort of the high ground of the pro-abortion movement. We're defending the Constitution.
Yeah.
We're defending, women restrict their constitutional right to have an abortion. And he just rips the veil away and said, no, there was never a constitutional right to have abortion. Go wait a minute in your legislatures, but don't try to make this, hide behind the Constitution doing this.
Yeah, one thing, one of the benefits of Roe versus Wade being overturned, assuming that it will be, is it takes away the argument from pro-lifers and pro-choicers alike that this is a constitutional right. There are pro-lifers that have always worked within the confines of Roe v. Wade, which is somewhat understandable, knowing that every law they pass and signed by the governor ended up being caught up in court. I get that. But no longer will that be an excuse as to why to do the right thing in your state legislature, because Roe versus Wade is now no longer an impediment for pro-lifers. And as you say, pro-choicers can no longer put all their eggs in that one basket that it's a so-called constitutional right. It's going to be nice not to hear that on college campuses. I can tell you that much. I mean, that's going to be a relief. So it removes that impediment, if you will, or a talking point, if nothing else, that this is somehow a constitutional right. It's found in the Constitution. That is no longer going to be the case, assuming this is the decision.
Right. Yeah, it's no longer it no longer has that, sacramental quality of
Mhm.
and that no, it's another political battle. And
Right.
some of us think it's more important than others, but it's just another political battle to be fought
So let's finish up
without
here. If you
without
have any more questions, you can go to our Facebook page and ask them, or if you have a comment, go to Create Equals Facebook page. Katie, I want to just finally ask you this question. There are those that say that we should never recognize Roe versus Wade. We should defy the law or the ruling. And now that it's out of the way, I wonder what argument they might have. But it's still true that the federal courts will have a part to play in abortion jurisprudence going forward, right? What would that look like? Now that Roe's out of the way, assuming, what would it look like for the role of the courts?
I think it's going to be very minimal. I mean, Alito addressed that at the end of this draft opinion. Said, okay, so what is the new standard? And the new standard is rational basis. And it's does the government have a rational basis for this law? And a rational basis can include protection of prenatal life. And so I don't see. It would be the
Well, now the
abortion
standard
regulation
is
would be
Dobbs, right? I mean, now the federal standard is Dobbs, right? Every abortion
oh, yeah, I
law
mean, it's
is
going to,
now
yeah,
going to be lined up against Dobbs v. Jackson, right?
oh yeah, and that's the thing, and that case says, if as long as it's rational, they will have to come up with they would have to in federal court come up with the argument that it isn't even a rational restriction, and that the government has no rational basis for this. And again, understanding that protection of unborn life is a rational basis. And so it would, I don't even know what a restriction would look like that could not meet that
I guess we're going to
test.
find out. My guest is Katie Short with Life Legal Defense Foundation. We're talking about the decision, or at least the the. I don't want to get ahead of myself here. The opinion written by Justice Alito that was leaked to the Politico last night. Katie, I want to wrap this up. If Roe is overturned, we're in a post-Roe America. That changes many things, of course. Legislatively, we know it goes back to the state legislatures. But now we need to be able to help the women that are in that situation, just like now, but even more so, who are facing a pregnancy, unwanted, if you want to put it that way, and looking for answers. We need to up our game, don't we?
I think we do. I mean, the pro-life movement has done a tremendous amount to help women facing unplanned pregnancies and crisis pregnancies, and certainly wouldn't want to you know basically show the pro-aborts were saying, oh, they never cared about women anyway, and have all those pregnancy care centers just shut
Mhm.
down overnight. No, I mean, I think there will always be there is a need for that, and probably there will be a greater need when abortion is not available to help support those women, and that this is a chance for the pro-life movement to show that they have always been sincere in their desire to help
I
women.
agree. And folks, I just want to exhort you. This is not an official decision of the U.S. Supreme Court. This is only a draft of a majority opinion by one of the justices. We don't want to celebrate. There'll be a time for that, at least at some level. But this is the time to get serious about our efforts to end abortion altogether and provide the resources to parents who are considering abortion. And some of the things we're looking at doing here is to be able to employ some of our resources in states where we have a really good chance of pushing over the finish line some of these laws that have been on the books but held up, maybe trigger laws, stuff like that. So we're going to be unveiling other actions as things progress over the next months after after this decision is handed down. We're also raising money currently to purchase an ultrasound van that we can deploy kind of in a mobile ultrasound. It might be stationed at border states to states that have outlawed abortion, because parents are going to be traveling across state lines, more than likely to have abortions. We want to be able to be in a position to influence them and help them to change their minds and not kill their babies. So there's things that we're doing here at Created Equal. It's not time to lay down our arms here. It's time to recommit ourselves to the fight. It's just begun. I've been at this for 30 years, and I really honestly didn't know I would ever see this day. And as a final note, we have to thank Donald Trump for putting 3 justices on the Supreme Court. The pro-life movement had something to do with that, no question. But who would have thunk Donald Trump, of all people, will be go down in the history books possibly as the man who put the justices on the Supreme Court to reverse the most egregious decision in the United States Supreme Court history. So those people who are never Trumpers, if you haven't come on side of the president, former president, this is the time to do it, because this is big news coming out of Washington. Katie, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
All right.
Bye.
This momentous outcome, it looks like, at the U.S. Supreme Court, where it looks like they're going to be overturning Roe versus Wade. We'll see you next time. God bless you. God bless America. And remember, America, to bless God.
You've been listening to Mark Harrington, your radio activist. For more information on how to make a difference for the cause of life, liberty, and justice, go to createdequal.org. To follow Mark, go to markharringtonshow.com. Be sure to tune in next time for your marching orders in the culture war.